One major change I have made this year so far is that I am ditching History Quest and I'm moving on to something that's making Jenny do a little happy dance. If you don't know, Jenny is the resident CM enthusiast at Kids Learning Forward Life. So when I told her that I just wasn't really loving our history curriculum, she told me, hey, just give the AO readings a try. And so that is what I have done, and so I'm going to give you a rundown on that and all of the other curriculum I am using and loving and not liking so far this year. Now, why wasn't History Quest working for us? Why I loved the story-like approach and the sequential order of everything we were doing History Quest Ancient Times, I found that the history hops were not working well for our family. Now, the history hops are where the author takes you and throws you back in time and you meet somebody and you learn different things about how the world was back then. And again, these were super great and my kids were liking them. The only problem is that she uses second person point of view. So she's constantly saying, you are doing this, you are doing this, which again, to really put you in that moment, it works really well. Unfortunately, there were a few times where she was saying you, and it just didn't resonate, like that wasn't something that my kids and I would be doing. Now, nothing bad by any means. So a quick example is just we were on a ship at sea, and kind of the whole time the history hop was saying, oh, you're so seasick, oh, you're so seasick, and it was hard for you to talk, but you were still meeting people, and my boys, we've been on boats, and they were like, we don't get seasick when we're on boats, so it kind of just deterred a little too much from the actual learning that should have been going on, what we were learning about. And then one other example was in the time of Julius Caesar. We were meeting Caesar and he was coming back, and then there was a battle about to begin. And so the history hop was saying, oh, you take a look at the weapons and you start thinking about the battle that's about to begin and you decide it's time to go. And my kids were like, wait, no, we want to see the battle. We don't want to leave yet. So there were just random little things like that. Again, nothing bad. I wouldn't say that you need to totally not use this because of that. But I felt like when that happened, my kids and I got too off topic of what we were supposed to be learning about. And we're just like, oh man, we really wanted to learn more about that, which we could totally go and do that on our own. But it just wasn't working well in our daily curriculum. So before chatting with Jenny and having her suggest some of the Ambleside Online readings, I did get a book recommendation from a friend called By the Great Horn Spoon. And this, I know what living books are based on listening to Jenny and reading some of the Charlotte Mason topics. And so this book is all about a boy and his butler, and they go from the East Coast and sail around to go to California for the gold rush. And this story was so cool that it taught you about history, it let you know some real facts, but it had this fun story-like element. And I was like, oh my gosh, Jenny, this must be what a living book is. And Jenny had never read that specific book, but the way I was describing it, she's like, yeah, it does sound, very living book friendly. And so I was like, okay, so where can I find more living books? And so that's where she's like, hey, try Ambleside Online. So I had already been thinking about moving to our island story once we finished History Quest. We didn't quite finish it, but we did hop over, and so we have started our island story. And that, my kids were really enjoying that. So anyway, it got me to go on to the Ambleside Online website, and I even printed off some of their schedules. So again, Ambleside Online is a free Charlotte Mason-based curriculum, and I will link to their website below, and you can go and see everything they have to offer. They sort things out by subject or by year. And so again, I just really wanted it for history and even a little bit of science, because there was one book, the Burgess book, what is it? The Burgess's Animal Book for Children. And my kids have been loving that. It's just this little, they add a story element, but there's just a lot of facts in there. And even my son was like, wow, this is really cool. It's a story, but we're learning things. And I'm like, yay, they're liking it. So I just cut out everything else and I'm just focusing on history and some of the science reading. So the reason I really needed more books to read, again, I even had History Quest on audiobook, because we spend a lot of time in the car going to and from activities. Since we live out a little more rural, a lot of our activities require us to travel at least 20 minutes or more. So what a better time to have some audiobooks on. I have been utilizing LibriVox and Hoopla for a lot of the Ambleside Online readings. Again, it's kind of hit or miss depending on the quality and who's reading it. With LibriVox, Hoopla is a little bit better, but you have limits on how many books you can borrow, and it's through my library, but you can borrow, I think, 3 per month. So I try to use that more sparingly, or know that we're going to be really diving into that book. So we do all of our Ambleside Online readings in the car. Along with our island story, we also have read 50 Famous Stories Retold. We have started the Burgess Animal Book for children. We even started Viking Tales. So there's so many things that we can just put on. Depending on how fast we go through these, I am going to try and start incorporating some narrations as well, which is just where the kids will tell me back what they heard. Because we can do that in the car as well. I just pause and kind of do that. I have not implemented that yet, but I think I'm going to kind of start doing that just to see what they're retaining from listening. Something else that is new this year that I didn't think I needed, I finally got the All About Spelling curriculum. I didn't think I needed it. I was like, oh, my kids know how to read, and I've heard research about the more they read, the more they'll kind of pick up on spelling. But I was finding there were very simple little errors that my 4th grader was making that I was like, I know there's like a rule. So if he just knew that rule, then he would be able to implement that. So I did skip ahead to kind of the middle of the level 1, where it starts introducing, when to use C or K at the beginning of the word, when to use K or CK at the end of a word, and when to use double L, double F, double S, double Z. And so I am just kind of cherry picking and picking those lessons that I know that are giving my kiddos a hard time. My 3rd and 4th grader, I'm having them both do this together. And I will probably be keeping this around and shortly be starting some of the basic levels with my 1st grader, since I don't want him to have those same gaps as he moves forward through his learning. And the last new thing that I added this year is utilizing IXL. So IXL is an online program that has English, math, science, history, and even Spanish. I wouldn't call them lessons. They're more like quizzes. There is some lesson aspect that I think they're adding, but this is a new program to me. So again, I will hopefully do a review once I get a few more months under my belt to see how I like it and what my true thoughts are. So I'm using IXL as more of a backup. So I do work from home, and if there's ever a day where I know I'm extra busy or I have a lot of meetings, then I might have my kiddos utilize IXL for like math or English language arts or even history or science, although we haven't been using that as much. I've been using it as kind of my math and reading backup. One thing that my kids have really liked about IXL is that the website ABC Yeah, I've noticed that their games are incorporated into this program. So there's no ads on the side because you're paying for IXL, but they do get to play all of these games, and they are more learning type games. So when my kids want to just play games on the computer, I like that they're doing these games, but I don't have to worry about the ABC Yeah website of it having all these ads and things that my kids can click and go to another website. I do love the ABC Yeah games, but I have never recommended them before because, again, anything that's free, you have to have ads, and that's the way the company keeps their servers going. But I really just don't like how many ads are on ABC Yeah. So IXL also has Spanish as well. So I haven't really utilized this because I didn't add it on until just recently. And but I thought it would be a fun way for me to kind of have little quizzes for the boys based on what they're learning in their Homeschool Spanish Academy lessons. My kiddos are doing Homeschool Spanish Academy lessons twice a week, most weeks, and that is where they get one-on-one lesson time with an instructor, and that's great. But I found that even with twice a week, because last year I was only doing it once a week, with twice a week I felt like they still needed that practice because the teacher the next time they go would be asking and quizzing them, and my kiddos hadn't quite mastered anything. So I was like, okay, we need something to practice more daily. So one thing I did was I created a YouTube playlist for each of my boys, and I found YouTube videos that were focused around whatever they're learning in their lessons. And each of my 3 boys are on different things because they're different ages and grades. So they're each learning different things. But along with the YouTube thing, I also got some flashcards, so some Spanish verb flashcards. These have been helping me more than them because, the verbs there, it gets a little crazy when you're trying to put it in front of yo or tu or el or all that stuff. I'm not a Spanish expert. I have high school Spanish under my belt, so a lot of this is review for me. I also just got some other flashcards. I was a little bummed. These flashcards I bought, They have, like, I don't know if you can see here, but they have like caro, and then that is written on the front. So it's not just the picture. So I wish I would have realized that before I bought it. So if I do use it with my kiddos, I just put my finger above it. I'm like, look at this picture. What is this? And then they can tell me in Spanish. But you know, my 3rd and 4th grader can kind of read, and especially in Spanish, they're like, oh, I know what that is because I can read it. And so I'm not quite sure what the thinking was behind those. So I wouldn't recommend this exact brand, but I do like having those flashcards available. I also got these Spanish for Kids First Readers. It even has audio. It came with it. So I think it's just nice to have the audio and having them listen to more and more things. Lastly, I also found at our school's library was a Muzi DVD set, and so it has all different languages, so we're doing the Spanish one, and I'm having my kids start that. We literally just started that yesterday and watched the first episode, so my kids were not totally put off by it. It is older graphics, but me watching it as well, I was like, oh, I can kind of see how they're teaching. A lot of repetition, a lot of, showing pictures with it, and being able to kind of show what words mean, rather than just, saying, car is caro, and not just using English, but using a full immersion, only using Spanish in their program. Okay, so that is all of the new things that I have added since my beginning of the year video. But I'm just going to go over everything else really quickly and kind of tell you our progress, anything I like or don't like about each program. For English Language Arts, I've been utilizing IEW. I really like it, and I think when we use it, my kids get a lot out of it. At the beginning of the year, it was like a struggle to get my kiddos to write just a simple paragraph. And then now they're writing multiple paragraphs and not even like complaining about it. So that's good. They're getting used to writing, and that's really what I wanted to see, and kind of learning how to write and form sentences and everything like that. The only downside is that the videos are long. I'm not quite ready to have my kiddos watch the video on their own. So I don't just say, hey, go turn that on and watch it. I like to sit in there and watch it as well so that I know what the curriculum is teaching, because I really don't know what the best writing is, and I'm not saying that this is the best writing program, but I did like that had that video, and it's more classroom style, very classical, but again, I needed something that was very structured for writing to help me. Literature studies, I'm still loving. I find it very important. My kiddos do independent reading, but I think it's very important to have kiddos read aloud to you, even into those upper grades, just to kind of you be able to know where they're at reading-wise, and can, ask comprehension questions, or even have them narrate back to you what they just read, and by me listening to it, I know what they read, so I can kind of gauge in my own head where they might have gaps. The last part of English Language Arts we have is handwriting, and we're doing cursive this year. We finished these books like really, really quickly. I think you're supposed to do maybe a page a day, and I was having them do 2 pages a day. So we kind of zoomed through this. I mean, there's still plenty to do in here, but we'll probably be finishing that before the end of the school year. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do handwriting-wise for them when they finish these. But so if you have any ideas. I know that the Handwriting Without Tears has like a building writers program, I think, so I might look into that and kind of have them take the skills they've learned and now move it into a little extra writing practice. I'm not sure. Let me know if you've used that program and if you like it. I'd be curious to know. And then my first grader is just using the My First Printing book, and so that, again, he's been kind of moving quickly through it, so I may just get the next level up for him and have him start doing that to keep those skills going. Math, this shouldn't come as a surprise to you. The same thing we have always done. My kiddos are working in, my first graders in finishing up 2A, we're finishing up 3A for my 3rd grader, and my 4th grader is finishing up 4A. Primary Mathematics is just one of those programs, especially I'm using the Standards Edition just because that's the one I started with. I know they have a lot more editions and different things. They have a Common Core, and they even have an updated one, but I just never, I was scared to switch because I didn't want any gaps, because I didn't want to sit down and do all the research and compare. Although I know there's lots of videos out there kind of comparing some of the older versions to the new version. But again, busy. This is working, so we're just gonna keep on moving on. For science, like I said at the beginning of the year, I'm not using a curriculum. I am utilizing YouTube videos, and now I've incorporated in some of the Ambleside Online readings. And then we have property and animals, and they're doing 4-H. All of my kiddos are doing 4-H this year, so we're learning a lot there. So I'm just finding that science is just part of our life, and if they have questions, when they have questions, we make the time to answer them. So I actually have a log that I've been keeping about all the different science topics we learn each month. That way I can kind of keep track. I mean, we have learned so many different things. I'm going to read a list off for you, a few things. We have done taxonomy and classification. We've done some videos on the Mars rover. Again, 4-H. We've done a crystal growing lab. We've been using Crunch Lab boxes for engineering. Those have been working fabulously. I love it. We even did some kiwi crates early on in the year, and they've even been working out in the garden. So much science has been happening, and that's just a portion of the list of different things we've covered in the last few months. The last two things my kiddos use daily, but it's more kind of independent. I don't do anything too strict, but they do typing. So they do about 5 lessons on Typing Club, and then they do 20 minutes daily of piano. And so we have Simply Piano, the app, and they are able to pick different songs. They do move through the lessons, but they kind of have to prove to me that they've mastered what they've already learned before I'll let them go too far in the lessons. So they do a lot of practice with practicing different songs and whatnot. So those two things we use daily, and they're still working for us, and I just love that it's an extra independent thing that I know they can go do if I'm working with math or English or something else with another student, that they can go do that. And so that is how our year is going so far. If you are interested in any of the curriculums I've talked about, most of them I do have a video review, so you can check that out. I'll try to link those in the description. If you're interested in Crunch Labs and why we love it so much, I will leave a link to a video right here. And then if you want more Ambleside Online information, I will leave a link to one of Jenny's videos here so you can research more. See you next time, and happy homeschooling.